Senate will come to order. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell,
Present.
Blanco, Campbell, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa, Huffman, Hughes, Johnson, King, Colcourse, Lamantia, Menendez, Middleton, Miles, Nichols, Parker, Paxton, Perry, Schwartner, Sparks, Springer, West, Whitmire, Zaffarini.
Members, a quorum is present. Would those in the gallery and on the floor please rise for the invocation be delivered by Pastor Ben Rosenberger, First Baptist Church in Victoria.
It's an honor. Let us pray. God, first I want to pause and say thank you for your grace, mercy, and sustaining love. Thank you for your steadfast kindness that is demonstrated every day, each time we are blessed to open our eyes once again each morning. Your gift of life, a blessing undeserved, is certainly worth acknowledging and saying thank you. Secondly, God, please guide leaders in our country to humble their hearts as they lead regarding a healthy awareness of a divine creator who has guided our country to find worth, value, and dignity in all human beings. Guide our leaders to conduct themselves with such humility as they have been divinely placed as for such a time and elected to be leaders that will ultimately be accountable to you, God. Thirdly and finally, please help the Senate to be guided by your wisdom and drawn to be in tune with you more and more as they seek to genuinely commune with you. As our leaders choose to humbly seek you, please let them be guided with personal divine conviction themselves to guide our country in the face of ever-increasing real problems facing the American people, from division to materialism to environments of hypocrisy and so many more challenges that we desperately need our leaders to collectively lead our country through. Lord, lead us and lead our leaders. It's your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Rosenberger. Thank you. The Dean of the Senate moves to dispense with the reading of yesterday's journal. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Motion is adopted. Mr. Doorkeeper.
Mr. President, there's a message from the House.
Admit the messenger.
Mr. President, I'm directed by the House to inform the Senate that the House has taken the following action.
Thank you, Mr. Messenger. Senator Nichols, you're recognized to introduce the Doctor of the Day.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, colleagues, I'm honored to present Dr. Paula Denson, our Doctor of the Day. She received her Bachelor of Science in Biology from Baylor, went to medical school, University of Texas Medical Branch, attended her residency, University of Texas Medical Branch, Department of Family Medicine. She works at the Tyler County Hospital. She is also a medical director of the Tyler County Hospital Family Medical Clinic and the Woodville Health and Rehabilitation Center. She is a proud member of the American Academy of Family Practice, Texas Academy of Family Practice, and the Hardin-Tyler Bi-County Medical Society. She also serves as Secretary Treasurer of the Texas Medical Association. She served honorably in my district since 1986. Please give me a warm welcome to Dr. Denson.
Senator Eckhart, you're recognized for an introduction.
Thank you so much. It is my pleasure to introduce Superintendent and CEO Claire Bugan, who has served for nearly 50 years as the Superintendent and CEO of the Texas School for the Deaf with dedication and with heart. Hey, y'all, just give me a wave. There we go. Yay! Originally starting as a substitute teacher in 1975, Ms. Bugan went on to serve as principal, director of education, assistant superintendent, and finally, superintendent for the last 25 years. She has ardently advocated for inclusive and equitable access for deaf and hard of hearing students by improving practices, bringing in new technologies, and expanding the Career Technical Education dual credit program at TSD. Ms. Bugan's dedication to education extends far beyond TSD, as she proudly serves as on the Board of Trustees for the Gallaudet University in Washington, D.C., the global leader in education for deaf and hard of hearing students, is a member of the Conference of Educational Administrators of Schools and Programs for the Deaf, chairing the Accreditation of Schools Committee. She's previously served as President and Secretary of the Convention of American Instructors of the Deaf, and was instrumental in the development of the national agenda for the education of deaf students. Her recent awards include Outstanding Women in Texas Government and the Robert R. Davila Award for Meritorious Contributions to the Field of Deafness presented by the CEASD. Claire is joined by a number of her colleagues and several students today, and I want to recognize them as well. Evangelina Diaz, Jaden Diaz, Victoria Dovbina, Tyler Landry, Lev Shaman, Tamra, I'm going to mess up your name, Tamra, Tadavosian, and Toby Thompson. I can't say thank you enough, Claire, for your years of service to not just the Texas School of the Deaf, which is such an integral part of our Austin community, but to the deaf education as a whole for the entire nation. It has been invaluable, and you deserve the most joyous retirement. Congratulations. And please join me in applause for our deaf community and for Ms. Bugan. Thanks so much, members.
Chair lays out the following resolution. Secretary will read the resolution.
Senate Resolution 545 by Middleton, congratulating Captain Wallace R. Hogan on his retirement from the Galveston, Texas City Pilots.
Chair recognizes Senator Middleton on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President, members. And today I have the honor of recognizing Captain Wally Hogan, following more than 21 years of outstanding service, not only to Galveston County, but this state on his retirement. Captain Hogan is retiring from the Galveston, Texas City Pilots, and the role of our pilots is vital to the safety and efficiency of our Texas ports. And as captain for the Galveston, Texas Pilots for over 2 decades, Captain Hogan helped safely guide over 8,000 vessels through the busiest waterway intersection in this country, ensuring the continued growth of our Texas economy, including guiding the battleship Texas. And thank you for not sinking that. I did that. I'm proud to have him as a constituent of Senate District 11 And I hope that you'll join me all in wishing him a warm retirement after his many years of hard work and dedication to the great state of Texas. Congratulations, Wally. And with that, I move adoption.
Members, is there objection to the adoption of the resolution? Chair hears none. Resolution is adopted. chair lays out the following resolution. Secretary will read the resolution.
Senate Resolution 568 by Johnson West, commending the Right Care program for its contributions to mental health care.
Chair recognizes Senator Johnson on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I am delighted to introduce to you today the Rapid Integrated Group Healthcare Team from Dallas, Texas. In 2018, the Dallas Police and Fire Rescue Departments, the Meadows Mental Health Policy Institute, and the Parkland Health Hospital System came together to forge a partnership with the aim of ensuring that individuals who are in the throes of a mental health crisis are not going to jail and not clogging our emergency rooms, but are receiving the kind of care they need, and thereby making us safer and providing a better form of care for people who are experiencing mental health problems. In this Mental Health Awareness Month, I think it's appropriate that we recognize their efforts. The Rapid Integrated Group Healthcare Team, also known as Right Care Unit, as I said, was established in 1983. They're managed by the Office of Integrated Public Safety Solutions. They bring together a multidisciplinary team. We're talking about paramedics, police officers, mental health professionals, all skilled professionals in law enforcement, safety, and in mental health. In the last 5 years alone, the Right Care Unit has served over 25,000 individuals and answered over 30,000 calls for service. They've decreased emergency detentions in the South Central Division by 60%. And in the first quarter of 2023, the Right Care Unit answered nearly 5,000 calls and diverted 81 individuals from jail. I want to recognize the members of the Right Care Unit who've joined us today in the gallery. Kevin Oden, the Director of the Office of Integrated Public Safety Solutions. Tabitha Castillo, the Manager of the Right Care Unit Office of Integrated Public Safety Solutions. Victoria Moe, the Senior Government Affairs Manager, the Office of Government of the Offices of Government Affairs, and Linda Udarian, the Government Affairs Coordinator from the Offices of Government Affairs. Members, this is good policy being led by individuals in our communities. I hope that everybody is observing the excellent example they've set for the community, or for our state. And as a member of the State Legislative Mental Health Caucus, I'm pleased to commend you today and thank the members of the Right Care Unit for their compassionate and highly effective work providing assistance to people who are experiencing mental health crises. Thank you for the work you do.
Is there objection to the adoption of the resolution? Chair hears none. Resolution is adopted. Members, the following motion in writing.
Mr. President, I move that the nomination of Justin Berry to be a member of the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement be withdrawn from the Committee on Nominations, and I further move that the nomination be returned to the governor pursuant to his request. Motion by Senator Campbell.
Members, is there objection to the adoption of the motion? Hearing and seeing none, motion is adopted. Members, if there are no objections, I'd like to postpone the reading and referral of bills until the end of today's session. Is there objection? Chair hears none. The reading and referral is postponed. Members, that concludes the morning call. Senator Betancourt, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business, take up and consider House Bill 1427.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. House Bill 1427 by Representative Elizabeth Campos deals with the prosecution and harassment of burner phones. Temporary burner phones are short-lived numbers and typically inexpensive or free. The user doesn't have to sign a formal contract or with a communications provider or share personal information to receive a temporary number. Currently, there's a loophole in the penal code that allows obscene, intimidating, threatening telephone calls or electronic communication from temporary phone numbers to be excluded as harassment. This allows the harassment offenses to continue without criminal punishment and for the victimization of both children and adults. House Bill 1427 addresses the harassment loophole from burners by adding an act of harassment to include obscene, intimidating, threatening phone calls or other electronic communications from a temporary or disposable telephone number provided by an internet application or technological or other technological means of an offense. And with that, Mr. President, I move suspension of the regular order of business, take up House Bill 1427.
Members, Senator Betancourt moves suspension of the regular order of business, take up and consider House Bill 1427. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none. Rule is suspended. Chair lays that on second reading. House Bill 1427. Secretary will read the caption.
House Bill 1427 relating to the prosecution of the offense of harassment.
Senator Betancourt, you're recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move passage of House Bill 1427 to third reading.
Members, Senator Betancourt moves passage to third reading. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none. Bill is passed to third reading. Senator Betancourt, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
So moved, Mr. President.
Members, Senator Betancourt moves suspension to the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt,
Being 31 ayes and no nays, the rule is suspended. Chair lays that on third reading and final passage. HB 1427. Secretary will read the caption.
HB 1427 relating to the prosecution of the offense of harassment.
Senator Betancourt, you're recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move final passage of House Bill 1427.
Members, Senator Betancourt moves final passage. HB 1427. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt,
Being 31 ayes and no nays, the bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator Betancourt.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Eckhart, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business. Take up and consider House Bill 2867.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members. Members, this is regarding the historic Lions Municipal Golf Course, known as Muni, here in Austin. The Save Historic Muni District was established in the 86th legislature, but the district has had some setbacks in reaching a final deal. HB 2867 would extend the deadline to reach an agreement to May 31, 2025. The district would continue to be expressly prohibited from imposing taxes or exercising eminent domain, and would continue to be authorized to issue bonds and impose fees. The district's powers and restrictions would all remain the same as when it was passed. If an agreement were not made by May 2025, the district would cease to exist. Mr. President, I move suspension.
Members, Senator Eckhart moves suspension of the regular order of business. House Bill 2867. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, rule is suspended. Chair lays out on second reading House Bill 2867. Secretary will read the caption.
House Bill 2867 relating to the date of dissolution of the Safe Historic Muni District.
Senator Eckhart, you're recognized for a motion.
Thank you so much. I move passage to third reading.
Members, Senator Eckhart moves passage to third reading. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, bill is passed to third reading. Senator Eckhart, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
I so move.
Members, Senator Eckhart moves suspension to the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bettencourt, Birdwell, Blanco.
There being 28 ayes and 2 nays, the rule is suspended. Chair lays that on third reading and final passage, HB 2867. Secretary will read the caption.
House Bill 2867, relating to the date of dissolution of the Save Historic Muni District.
Senator Eckhart is recognized for a motion.
I move final passage, sir.
Members, Senator Eckhart moves final passage, HB 2867. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bettencourt, Birdwell,
There being
Blanco.
28 ayes and 2 nays, the bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator Eckhart.
Thank you very much. Thank you, members.
Senator Flores, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on House Bill 2154.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I move to suspend the regular order of business to take up and consider House Bill 2154. State law currently requires certain law enforcement agencies to adopt physical fitness programs. The Office of the Attorney General is currently not included amongst these agencies. Agencies that adopt these standards must also adopt a reward policy that grants administrative leave for officers who participate in the program. House Bill 2154 seeks to allow for the OAG to create a physical fitness program that benefits the physical and emotional well-being of the commissioned officers while providing reasonable assurance that the officers and employees can perform their law enforcement job functions. In conclusion, this bill would align the Office of the Attorney General with other state law enforcement agencies, including DPS, TPWD, TABC, and TDCJ. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, for consideration of House Bill 2154, and I move suspension of the Senate's regular order of business.
Members, Senator Flores moves suspension of the regular order of business. House Bill 2154. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, rule is suspended. Chair lays out on second reading House Bill 2154. Secretary will read the caption.
House Bill 2154, relating to the adoption of physical fitness programs and standards for law enforcement officers employed by the Office of the Attorney General.
Senator Flores, you recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move passage third reading.
Members, Senator Flores moves passage to third reading. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, bill is passed to third reading. Senator Flores, you recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
So moved, Mr. President.
Members, Senator Flores moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bettencourt, Birdwell, Blanco.
30 ayes and 1 nay. The rule is suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage HB 2154. Secretary will read the caption.
House Bill 2154, relating to the adoption of physical fitness programs and standards for law enforcement officers employed by the Office of the Attorney General.
Senator Flores, you recognized for a motion.
I move final passage, Mr. President.
Members, Senator Flores moves final passage HB 2154. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bettencourt, Birdwell,
There being
Blanco.
30 ayes and 1 nay, the bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members.
Senator Alvarado, you are recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on House Bill 2416.
Thank you, Mr. President, I move to suspend the regular order of business to take up and consider the committee substitute for House Bill 2416. Members, the Gulf Coast Protection District was created in the 87th legislative session to be the non-federal sponsor for 2 U.S. Army Corps of Engineer projects known together as the Coastal Barrier. Committee substitute for House Bill 2416 creates a GRD account for the Gulf Coast Protection District for necessary and useful projects for protecting the Gulf Coast located within its territory. Members, I do have a floor amendment.
Members, Senator Alvarado moves suspension of the regular order of business. House Bill 2416. Is there any objection? Hearing and seeing none. Rules are suspended. Chair lays out on second reading. Committee substitute House Bill 2416. Secretary will read the caption.
House Bill 2416 relating to the creation of the Gulf Coast Protection Trust Fund to be administered by the General Land Office.
Members, there is an amendment. Secretary will read the amendment.
Floor amendment number 1 by Alvarado.
Senator Alvarado on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. The floor amendment clarifies that money can only be used for expenditures, number 1, eligible for credit towards the non-federal match. Second, comply with a local cooperation agreement between the GLO and the GCPD. Lastly, only projects that are necessary or useful for the protection of the coast within the district's territory. We worked on this amendment with the Lieutenant Governor's staff, the GLO, and the Comptroller's office.
Senator Betancourt, for what purpose?
Ask the author a question of the
You yield, Senator Alvarado.
I do.
You recognize Senator Betancourt.
Senator Alvarado, I guess the question I've got here is I just want to make sure I understand where the money goes in this. Okay. You've got the land office shall deposit to the credit of the Gulf Coast Protection Account any federal money received by the state for the protection of the Gulf Coast to the extent permitted by federal law. And then the money in the Gulf Coast Protection Account may be used only to pay for expenditures, and then there's a list. Okay, so what I'm trying to make sure is that any monies that are coming into the account, is there any other source of monies for that account, or is this a specifically legislative statute-directed created account?
There is not any, we're not appropriating any money at this time for this account. This account is outside of the Treasury, and this money will be used for infrastructure projects. There are some guardrails that have been set up by the GLO on how the money can be spent and where it can be spent.
Okay, because the way this is, I mean, you've got a statutory, I just want to make sure, and is the GLO maintaining this account, or is it the Gulf Coast Protection? Wait, I mean, who's got the ownership of the account?
The GLO will have oversight, and that's why we put, at request of the Lieutenant Governor's office, we put some guardrails in there, and it says it here, that they must comply with the terms of a local cooperation. And agreement executed by the Land Office and the Gulf Coast Protection District established under Chapter 9502.
Okay, all right, thank you so much.
Thank you for your question.
Members, the motion is on the adoption of floor amendment number 1. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none. Floor amendment number 1 is adopted. Senator Alvarado, you recognized for a motion.
I move passage to third reading.
Member, Senator Alvarado moves passage to third reading. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none. Bill is passed to third reading. Senator Alvarado, you recognize for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
So moved.
Member, Senator Alvarado moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt,
31 ayes and no nays. The rule is suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage. Committee substitute House Bill 2416. Secretary will read the caption.
Committee substitute House Bill 2416 relating to the creation of the Gulf Coast Protection Trust Fund to be administered by the General Land Office.
Senator Alvarado, you recognize for a motion.
Mr. President, I move final passage.
Member, Senator Alvarado moves final passage. Committee substitute House Bill 2416. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Blanc.
31 ayes and no nays. The bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator Alvarado.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Hinojosa, you are recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business, take up and consider committee substitute House Bill 1710.
Thank you, Mr. President, members. House Bill 1710 relates to notice provided to a court regarding a defendant confined in a state jail felony facility. Under current law, judges have the ability to suspend a state jail sentence after 75 days and impose community supervision. Yet, this is seldom done because there is no adequate mechanism to notify judges when a defendant has served 75 days in a state jail facility. This bill requires the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, on the request of the judge, to notify the judge of the date a defendant would have served 75 days in a state jail felony facility. The notice will be provided by email or other electronic communication no later than the 60th day after a defendant was received in the custody of the facility. With that, Mr. President, members, I move suspension of the regular order of business.
Members, Senator Hinojosa moves suspension of the regular order of business on committee substitute House Bill 1710. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, rule is suspended. Chair lays out on second reading committee substitute House Bill 1710. Secretary will read the caption.
Committee substitute House Bill 1710 relating to notice provided to a court regarding a defendant confined in a state jail felony facility.
Senator Hinojosa, you recognize for a motion.
I'm going to pass it to third reading.
Members, Senator Hinojosa moves passage to third reading. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, bill is passed to third reading. Senator Hinojosa, you recognize for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
I so move, Mr. President.
Members, Senator Hinojosa moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Bergwell, Blanco.
31 ayes and no nays. The rule is suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage committee substitute House Bill 1710. Secretary will read the caption.
Committee substitute House Bill 1710 relating to notice provided to a court regarding a defendant confined in a state jail felony facility.
Senator Hinojosa, recognized for a motion.
I'm going to final passage of committee substitute House Bill 1710.
Members, Senator Hinojosa moves final passage committee substitute House Bill 1710. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Bergwell, Blanco.
31 ayes and no nays. The bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator Hinojosa.
Thank you, Mr. President and members.
Senator Perry, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on House Bill 1911.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, House Bill 1911, currently tax code contains a list of certain government employees that are allowed to exempt their names from public discourse. 1911 seeks the confidentiality protections in two groups: former employees of university healthcare providers at TDCJ and TJJD, and current or former DFPS attorneys. With that, I move to suspend the regular order of business.
Member Senator Perry moves suspension of the regular order of business, House Bill 1911. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, rule is suspended. Chair lays out on second reading House Bill 1911. Secretary will read the caption.
House Bill 1911, relating the confidentiality of certain home address information in ad valorem tax appraisal records.
Senator Perry, you're recognized for a motion.
Move passage to third reading.
Members, Senator Perry moves passage to third reading. Is there objection? Hearing none, the bill is passed to third reading. Senator Perry, you recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional three-day rule.
Move to suspend the constitutional three-day rule.
Members, Senator Perry moves suspension to the three-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco,
Being 31 ayes and no nays, the rule is suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage House Bill 1911. Secretary will read the caption.
House Bill 1911, relating the confidentiality of certain home address information in ad valorem tax appraisal records.
Senator Perry, you recognized for a motion.
Move final passage.
Members, Senator Perry moves final passage. House Bill 1911. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco.
31 ayes and no nays, the bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator Perry. Senator Hancock, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business. Take up and consider House Bill 1817.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend the regular order of business. Take up, consider House Bill 1817 relating to the validity of a contract for which a disclosure of interest parties is required. The government entities are required to file a disclosure of interest parties, otherwise known as a Form 1295, with the Texas Ethics Commission. House Bill 1817 updates the statute to allow for a cure period if a form of 1295 is found not to be on file. The government entity is required to send a written notice to the business of their failure to provide the form. Then the business entity has 10 business days to submit the form. With that, I move suspension.
Members, Senator Hancock moves suspension of the regular order of business, House Bill 1817. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, rule is suspended. Chair lays out on second reading House Bill 1817. Secretary will read the caption.
House Bill 1817, relating the validity of a contract for which a disclosure of interested parties is required.
Senator Perry, you recognized for a motion.
Move passage to the third reading.
Members, Senator Hancock moves passage to third reading. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, bill is passed to third reading. Senator Hancock, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional three-day rule.
That's what I mean.
Members, Senator Hancock moves suspension to the three-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco.
There being 31 ayes and no nays, the rule is suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage HB 1817. Secretary will read the caption.
HB 1817, relating the validity of a contract for which a disclosure of interested parties is required.
Senator Hancock, you're recognized for a motion.
Senator Perry and I move final passage of House Bill 1817.
Senator Hancock moves final passage of HB 1817. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco.
31 ayes and no nays, the bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator Perry. Senator Paxton, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on House Bill 844.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. I move to suspend the regular order of business to take up and consider House Bill 844. Currently, state statute does not designate all commercially sexually exploited children as victims of sex trafficking for purposes of qualifying for victim compensation grants. House Bill 844 remedies this by including solicitation or patronization of forced labor or services
including sexual conduct, by any person if the solicitation or patronization occurs in connection with a scheme or course of conduct that constitutes trafficking. This clarifies that these victims may also qualify for grant programs administered by the Office of the Governor and other crime victim compensation grants. I move to suspend.
Members, Senator Paxton moves suspension of the regular order of business, House Bill 844. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, rules are suspended. Chair lays out on second reading House Bill 844. Secretary will read the caption.
House Bill 844 relating to crime victims' compensation for criminally injurious conduct in connection with trafficking of persons.
Senator Paxton, you recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move passage to third reading.
Members, Senator Paxton moves passage to third reading. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, bill is passed to third reading. Senator Paxton, you recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend the 3-day rule.
Members, Senator Paxton moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt, Burgo, Blanco.
31 ayes and no nays. The rule is suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage HB 844. Secretary will read the caption.
HB 844 relating to crime victims' compensation for criminally injurious conduct in connection with trafficking of persons.
Senator Paxton, you recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move final passage.
Members, Senator Paxton moves final passage HB 844. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt, Burgo, Blanco.
31 ayes and no nays. Bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator Paxton.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, members.
Senator Parker, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business. Committee substitute House Bill 1034.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend the Senate's regular order of business to take up and consider the committee substitute of House Bill 1034. HB 1034 aims to grant Wise County Hot Fund authority to support historic preservation, restoration, and attract tourists to hidden gems in the area. Mr. President, I move suspension.
Members, Senator Parker moves suspension of the regular order of business. House Bill 10, Committee substitute House Bill 1034. There is objection. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt, Birdwell, Blanco,
Having
Campbell.
24 ayes and 7 nays, the rule is suspended. Chair lays out on second reading Committee substitute House Bill 1034. Secretary will read the caption.
Committee substitute House Bill 1034 relating to authorizing certain counties to impose a hotel occupancy tax and the use of revenue from that tax.
Senator Parker, you're recognized for a motion.
Mr. President, I move passage to third reading.
Members, Senator Parker moves passage to third reading. There is objection. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt, Birdwell,
There being
Blanco.
24 ayes and 7 nays, the bill is passed to third reading. If you can find one friend, Senator Parker, we can move.
Hey, hold on. I'll suspend.
Thank you.
Senator Parker, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
So moved.
Members, Senator Parker moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt, Birdwell,
Having
Blanco.
25 ayes and 6 nays, the rule is suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage Committee substitute House Bill 1034. Secretary will read the caption.
Committee substitute House Bill 1034 relating to authorizing certain counties to impose a hotel occupancy tax and the use of revenue from that tax.
Senator Parker, you recognized for a motion.
Mr. President, I move final passage.
Members, Senator Parker moves final passage. Committee substitute House Bill 1034. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt, Birdwell, Blanco.
Having 24 ayes and 7 nays, the bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator Parker. Senator Zaffarini, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on committee substitute House Bill 1527.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President and members, I move to suspend the Senate's regular order of business in order to take up and consider at this time the committee substitute for House Bill 1527 by Representative Tom Oliverson. It relates to the relationship between dentists and certain employee benefit plans and health insurers. Members, this bill would promote fairness and transparency in dentistry by limiting the circumstances for overpayment recovery, prohibiting disallowable clauses in contracts with dentists, and establishing clear requirements for third-party access. Mr. President, I move suspension.
Members, Senator Zaffarini moves suspension of the regular order of business on committee substitute House Bill 1527. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, rule is suspended. Chair lays out on second reading committee substitute House Bill 1527. Secretary will read the caption.
Committee substitute House Bill 1527, relating the relationship between dentists and certain employee benefit plans and health insurers.
Senator Zaffarini, recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move passage to third reading.
Members, Senator Zaffarini moves passage to third reading. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, bill is passed to third reading. Senator Zaffarini, you recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
Thank you, Mr. President. So moved.
Members, Senator Zaffarini moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt, Burgo,
Having 31 ayes and no nays, the rule is suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage committee substitute House Bill 1527. Secretary will read the caption.
Committee substitute House Bill 1527, relating the relationship between dentists and certain employee benefit plans and health insurers.
Senator Zaffarini, you're recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move final passage.
Members, Senator Zaffarini moves final passage. Committee substitute House Bill 1527. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt, Burgo,
Having 31 ayes and no nays, the bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator Zaffarini.
Thank you, Mr. President and members.
Senator Zaffarini, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on House Bill 3186.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President and members, I move to suspend the Senate's regular order of business in order to take up and consider at this time House Bill 3186 by Representative Jeff Leach, co-sponsored by Senator Perry. It relates to youth diversion strategies and procedures for children accused of certain fine-only offenses, and it is a Texas Judicial Council priority. Generally, members, this bill would provide courts with youth diversion strategy alternatives to adjudication, require justice and municipal courts to adopt a youth diversion plan, and allow them to designate a youth diversion coordinator. Mr. President, I move suspension.
Members, Senator Zaffarini moves suspension of the regular order of business. House Bill 3186. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, rule is suspended. Chair lays out on second reading House Bill 3186. Secretary will read the caption.
House Bill 3186, relating to youth diversion strategies and procedures for children accused of certain fine-only offenses in municipal and justice courts.
Senator Zaffarini, recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move passage to third reading.
Members, Senator Zaffarini moves passage to third reading. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, bill is passed to third reading. Senator Zaffarini, you recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
Thank you, Mr. President. So moved.
Members, Senator Zaffarini moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt,
There being
Burgo,
31 ayes and no nays, the rule is suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage HB 3186. Secretary will read the caption.
HB 3186, relating to youth diversion strategies and procedures for children accused of certain fine-only offenses in municipal and justice courts.
Senator Zaffarini, you recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move final passage.
Members, Senator Zaffarini moves final passage HB 3186. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt,
There being
Burgo.
31 ayes and no nays, the bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator Zaffarini.
Thank you, Mr. President and members.
Senator Zaffarini, you recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business, take up and consider House Bill 3660.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, members, I move to suspend the Senate's regular order of business in order to take up and consider at this time House Bill 3660 by Representative Cody Vasut. It relates to a defense to prosecution for the offense of cruelty to non-livestock animals under certain circumstances. Generally, members, this bill would clarify that persons who bring in feral cats as a part of a trap-neuter release program, then release them, are not abandoning the animals under the animal cruelty law. Mr. President, I move suspension.
Members, Senator Zeffirini moves suspension of the regular order of business, House Bill 3660. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, rules are suspended. Chair lays out on second reading House Bill 3660. Secretary will read the caption.
House Bill 3660 relating to a defense to prosecution for the offense of cruelty to non-livestock animals under certain circumstances.
Senator Zeffirini, you recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move passage to third reading.
Members, Senator Zeffirini moves passage to third reading. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, bill is passed to third reading. Senator Zeffirini, you recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
Thank you, Mr. President. So moved.
Members, Senator Zeffirini moves suspension to the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt,
There being 31 ayes and no nays, the rule is suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage HB 3660. Secretary will read the caption.
HB 3660 relating to a defense to prosecution for the offense of cruelty to non-livestock animals under certain circumstances.
Senator Zeffirini, recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move final passage.
Members, Senator Zeffirini moves final passage HB 3660. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt,
There being 31 ayes and no nays, the bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator Zeffirini.
Thank you, Mr. President and members.
Senator West, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on House Bill 4906.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. At this time, I move to suspend the Senate regular order of business, take up and consider House Bill 4906. 4906 would provide a simple technical fix to a statute where it appears a particular group of peace officers, those employed and commissioned by educational institutions, were omitted from the list of officers authorized to apply for search warrants seeking certain kinds of electronic evidence.
Members, Senator West moves suspension of the regular order of business, House Bill 4906. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, rule is suspended. Chair lays out on second reading, House Bill 4906. Secretary will read the caption.
House Bill 4906 relating to the installation and use of tracking equipment and access to certain communications by certain peace officers.
Senator West, recognized for a motion.
Will pass the third reading.
Members, Senator West moves passes the third reading. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, bill is passed the third reading. Senator West, recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional three-day rule.
Will move.
Members, Senator West moves suspension of the three-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt,
There being 30 ayes and 1 nay, the rule is suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage HB 4906. Secretary will read the caption.
HB 4906 relating to the installation and use of tracking equipment and access to certain communications by certain peace officers.
Senator West, you recognized for a motion.
For final passage of House Bill 4906.
Members, Senator West moves to final passage HB 4906. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt,
30 ayes and 1 nay, the bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator West.
Thank you.
Senator Perry, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business, take up and consider committee substitute House Bill 3059.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, GCD mitigation funds. Mitigation funds address the fact that when we export water out of one area into a different area, that we sometimes create well owners leaving them behind with no water in the wells. So 359 actually gives the options to the district, and it's a may, to increase existing mitigation funds or create new mitigation funding. And that's, I do have two amendments to kind of clarify at the point in time which those mitigation funds can be used and what they can be used for, and from the retrospective to the prospective. With that, I move to suspend regular order of business.
Members, Senator Perry moves suspension of the regular order of business. Committee substitute House Bill 3059. There is objection. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell.
There being 26 ayes and 5 nays, the rule is suspended. Chair lays out on second reading Committee substitute House Bill 3059. Secretary will read the caption.
Committee substitute House Bill 3059 relating to the export fee charged for the transfer of groundwater from a groundwater conservation district.
Members, there are amendments. Secretary will read the amendment.
Floor amendment number 1 by Perry.
Senator Perry on the amendment.
Yes, members. It just clarifies that wells that are exempt from the district's permitting requirements are not to be included in this mitigation or new fees. Well, an exempt well is still an exempt well after 359. Thank you.
Members, Senator Perry moves adoption of floor amendment number 1. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, floor amendment number 1 is adopted. Members, the following amendment. Secretary will read the amendment.
Floor amendment number 2 by Perry.
Senator Perry on the amendment.
Members, this one just says may use the funds obtained from the increase in the export fees subject after September 1st, 23 to only maintain the operability of significant affected groundwater development to allow for the highest practical level of groundwater production.
Members, Senator Perry moves adoption of floor amendment number 2. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, floor amendment number 2 is adopted. Senator Perry, you recognized for a motion.
Move passage to third reading.
Members, Senator Perry moves passage to third reading. There is objection. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco.
There being 26 ayes and 5 nays, the bill is passed to third reading. Senator Perry, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
Move to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
Members, Senator Perry moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bettencourt, Birdwell,
Having
Blanco.
26 ayes and 5 nays, the rule is suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage Committee Substitute House Bill 3059. Secretary will read the caption.
Committee Substitute House Bill 3059 relating to the export fee charged for the transfer of groundwater from a groundwater conservation district.
Senator Perry, recognized for a motion.
Move final passage.
Members, Senator Perry moves final passage Committee Substitute House Bill 3059. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bettencourt, Birdwell, Blanco.
Being 26 ayes and 5 nays, the bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator Perry.
Members.
Senator Huffman, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business. Committee Substitute House Bill 9.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. At this time, I move to suspend the regular order of business on the committee substitute to House Bill 9. Members, according to recent studies conducted by the State Broadband Development Office, almost 2.8 million Texas households, or roughly 7 million Texans, lack broadband internet access. This bill creates the Texas Broadband Infrastructure Fund to be administered by the Texas Comptroller. The Texas Broadband Infrastructure Fund is intended to be a special fund in the state treasury outside the GR fund. The Comptroller is charged with promulgating rules to administer this fund. The bill limits the comptroller's use of the fund to certain categories, including administering grants through the Broadband Development Program, funding 911 and Next-Gen 911 upgrades and services, funding for the pole replacement program created in the 2021 session, providing matching funds for federal money, including the Broadband Equity Access and Development Program, creating and updating the broadband maps, and providing outreach to communities regarding the expansion, adoption, affordability, and use of broadband services. I will have a constitutional amendment, a SHJR next, which would put the creation of the Texas Broadband Infrastructure Fund before Texas voters in November of 2023. Members, this bill seeks to distinguish the state of Texas with a strategic plan to support a holistic, state-driven approach towards addressing our state's connectivity needs. I move to suspend the regular order of business.
Members, Senator Huffman moves suspension of the regular order of business. Committee substitute House Bill 9. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, rule is suspended. Chair lays that on second reading. Committee substitute House Bill 9. Secretary will read the caption.
Committee substitute House Bill 9, relating to the development and funding of broadband and telecommunications services.
Members, there is an amendment. Secretary will read the amendment.
Floor amendment number 1 by Huffman.
Senator Huffman on the amendment.
Thank you, members. The floor amendment comes based on recommendation from the Comptroller's Office, who will be administering the Broadband Infrastructure Fund. It removes legal burdens, allowing for monies to be allocated without the need for burdensome legal filings for each individual asset. I move adoption of floor amendment number 1.
Members, Senator Huffman moves adoption of floor amendment number 1. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, floor amendment number 1 is adopted. Members, there is an amendment. Secretary will read the amendment.
Floor amendment number 2 by Nichols.
Senator Nichols on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. The floor amendment accomplishes the policy goal of ensuring that providers receiving BEAD money have skin in the game and maximize efficient distribution of state dollars. It will direct the broadband office to supplement the non-federal match on a sliding scale based on where it's necessary to add additional state funds to make a project area economically feasible to serve. This will allow the state to amplify the impact of the federal funding while ensuring that providers have skin in the game. And I believe it is acceptable to the author.
Senator Huffman on the amendment.
It is acceptable to the author.
Members, Senator Nichols moves adoption of floor amendment number 2. It is acceptable to Senator Huffman. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, floor amendment number 2 is adopted. Senator Huffman, you recognize for a motion.
I move passage to third reading of the committee substitute to House Bill 9.
Members, Senator Huffman moves passage to third reading. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, bill is passed to third reading. Senator Huffman, you recognize for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
So moved, Mr. President.
Members, Senator Huffman moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt, Birdwell,
30 ayes and 1 nay. The rule is suspended. Chair lays that on third reading and final passage. Committee substitute House Bill 9. Secretary will read the caption.
Committee substitute House Bill 9, relating to the development and funding of broadband and telecommunications services.
Senator Huffman, you recognize for a motion.
I move final passage of the committee substitute to House Bill 9.
Members, Senator Huffman moves final passage of committee substitute House Bill 9. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt, Birdwell, Blanco,
There being 30 ayes and 1 nay, the bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator Huffman.
Thank you.
Senator Huffman, you recognize for a motion on committee substitute House Joint Resolution 125.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, at this time I move to suspend the regular order of business to take up and consider the committee substitute to HJR 125. Members, as I mentioned in my previous layout, there remains a large population of Texans who still lack broadband. This HJR will put a measure on the November ballot to create the Texas Broadband Infrastructure Fund. It is intended to be a constitutionally dedicated special fund in the state outside the GR fund. It will represent a sizable investment by the state, but it will also, and very importantly, allow the state to pull down billions of additional dollars through the federal BEAD program. There is a 10-year sunset date in the HJR to allow unencumbered funds to be invested to incur interest and require the unexpended balance to be returned to the original source of funding. And with that, I move to suspend the regular order of business.
Members, Senator Huffman moves suspension of the regular order of business on committee substitute HJR 125. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, rule is suspended. Chair lays out on second reading committee substitute HJR 125. Secretary will read the caption.
Committee Substitute HJR 125, proposing a constitutional amendment creating the Broadband Infrastructure Fund to expand high-speed broadband access.
Senator Huffman, you're recognized for a motion.
I move passage to third reading of the committee substitute to HJR 125.
Members, Senator Huffman moves passage to third reading. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, bill is passed to third reading. Senator Huffman, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
So moved.
Members, Senator Huffman moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt, Burwell, Blanco.
30 ayes and 1 nay. The rule is suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage committee substitute HJR 125. Secretary will read the caption.
Committee Substitute HJR 125, proposing a constitutional amendment creating the Broadband Infrastructure Fund to expand high-speed broadband access.
Senator Huffman, you recognize for a motion.
I move final passage of the committee substitute to HJR 125.
Members, Senator Huffman moves final passage. Committee substitute HJR 125. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt,
There being 30 ayes and 1 nay, the bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator Huffman.
Thank you, Mr. President and members.
Mr. Doorkeeper.
Mr. President, there's a message from the House.
Admit the messenger.
Mr. President, I'm directed by the House. I'm directed by the House to inform the Senate that the House has taken the following action.
Thank you, Mr. Doorkeeper. Senator Eckhart, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on House Bill 671.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, members. HB 671 is a critical bill for suicide prevention among our vet population. Suicide is a critical and devastating problem that affects so many members of our state, and unfortunately, the members of our veteran community are significantly more likely to commit suicide. Over the past 20 years, the rate of veterans who commit suicide in Texas has increased by 25%. And Texas has the second highest number of veterans who commit suicide in the nation. 1.5 million individuals, 8% of our state, are veterans. They are our neighbors, our friends, our co-workers, and we can always do more to support them, especially when it comes to mental health. HB 671 recognizes that suicide among veterans is different than it is for the rest of Texas and requires a unique approach spearheaded by other veterans, veterans helping veterans. This bill directs the TVC to work with veterans groups and other organizations to conduct a suicide prevention campaign. Please join me in taking a step to support those who have done so much for us and our country. And Mr. President, I move suspension.
Members, Senator Eckhart moves suspension of the regular order of business, House Bill 671. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, rule is suspended. Chair lays out on second reading HB 671. Secretary will read the caption.
HB 671, relating to a veteran suicide prevention campaign.
Senator Eckhart, you're recognized for a motion.
I move passage to third reading, please.
Members, Senator Eckhart moves passage to third reading. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, bill is passed to third reading. Senator Eckhart, you recognize for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
So moved.
Members, Senator Eckhart moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bettencourt, Boardwell,
Having
Blanco.
30 ayes and 1 nay, the rule is suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage HB 671. Secretary will read the caption.
HB 671, relating to a veteran suicide prevention campaign.
Senator Eckhart, you recognize for a motion.
I move final passage.
Members, Senator Eckhart moves final passage HB 671. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bettencourt, Boardwell,
There being
Blanco.
30 ayes and 1 nay, the bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator Eckhart.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members, and thank you to our vet community.
Senator Alvarado, you are recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business, take up and consider House Bill 1769.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend the regular order of business to take up and consider House Bill 1769. The statute of limitations for crimes against children should reflect the seriousness of the crime and provide victims with adequate time to come forward. House Bill 1769 increases the statute of limitations of certain crimes against children, giving prosecutors more time to combat these crimes.
Members, Senator Alvarado moves suspension of the regular order of business on House Bill 1769. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, rule is suspended. Chair lays out on second reading House Bill 1769. Secretary will read the caption.
House Bill 1769, relating to the statute of limitations for certain offenses committed against children.
Senator Alvarado, you recognize for a motion.
Thank you. I move passage to third reading.
Members, Senator Alvarado moves passage to third reading. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, bill is passed to third reading. Senator Alvarado, you recognize for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
So moved.
Members, Senator Alvarado moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bettencourt, Boardwell, Blanco.
There being 31 ayes and no nays, the rule is suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage HB 1769. Secretary will read the caption.
HB 1769, relating to the statute of limitations for certain offenses committed against children.
Senator Alvarado, you recognize for a motion.
Move final passage.
Members, Senator Alvarado moves final passage House Bill 1769. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bettencourt, Boardwell,
There being
Blanco.
31 ayes and no nays, the bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator Alvarado.
Thank you, Mr. President and members.
Senator King, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business, take up and consider House Bill 387.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, this is a very simple bill. There is money, we believe, in the budget for the Texas State Guard Uniform and Insignia Fund. Right now, that's only allowed to accept private donations. This simply says that if appropriations are made, that they can be received by the Texas Military Department. Move suspension.
Members, Senator King moves suspension of the regular order of business on House Bill 387. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, the rule is suspended. Chair lays out on second reading House Bill 387. Secretary will read the caption.
House Bill 387, relating to the Texas State Guard Uniform and Insignia.
You're recognized for a motion, Senator King.
Move passage to third reading.
Members, Senator King moves passage to third reading. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, bill is passed to third reading. Senator King, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
So move.
Members, Senator King moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bettencourt, Boardwell, Blanco.
31 ayes and no nays. The rule is suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage HB 387. Secretary will read the caption.
HB 387, relating to the Texas State Guard Uniform and Insignia Fund.
Senator King, you recognized for a motion.
Move final passage.
Members, Senator King moves final passage HB 387. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bettencourt, Boardwell, Blanco.
31 ayes and no nays. The bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator King.
Thank you, Mr. President and members.
Senator Middleton, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on House Bill 3025.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I move to suspend the Senate's regular order of business to take up and consider House Bill 3025, named Bianca's Law. In April 1995, Deanna Hubert's 20-month-old child, Bianca, was taken from Texas by her father in Mexico in violation of a court-ordered child custody arrangement. Bianca's father was charged with interference with child custody, and a court issued a warrant for his arrest, and she spent the next 16 years looking for her daughter. In 2021, she was able to track her down with the help of a private investigator, but unfortunately, they could not extradite Bianca's father back to Texas because Mexico does not deem interference with child custody to be an extraditable offense under the Geneva Convention. Also, the statute of limitations had run on charging Bianca's father with kidnapping. House Bill 3025 amends the penal code to help reduce the likelihood of a similar injustice from taking place by removing the statute of limitations for interference with the child custody order, increasing the statute of limitations for kidnapping of a minor to 20 years after the minor's 18th birthday, and permitting prosecution of individuals for kidnapping if they interfere with the child custody order by fleeing the United States. And with that, I move suspension.
Members, Senator Middleton moves suspension of the regular order of business, House Bill 3025. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, rule is suspended. Chair lays out on second reading House Bill 3025. Secretary will read the caption.
House Bill 3025, relating the prosecution of the criminal offenses of aggravated kidnapping, and interference with child custody.
Senator Middleton, you're recognized for a motion.
Move passage to third reading.
Members, Senator Middleton moves passage to third reading. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, bill is passed to third reading. Senator Middleton, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
Move suspension.
Members, Senator Middleton moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt, Birdwell, Blanco.
31 ayes and no nays. The rule is suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage HB 3025. Secretary will read the caption.
HB 3025, relating the prosecution of the criminal offenses of aggravated kidnapping, and interference with child custody.
Senator Middleton, you recognized for a motion.
Move final passage.
Members, Senator Middleton moves final passage HB 3025. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell.
There being 31 ayes and no nays, the bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator Middleton. Senator LaMantia, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business, take up and consider House Bill 639.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend the regular order of business to take up House Bill 639. HB 639 increases the number of temporary bingo licenses a qualifying organization can receive on an annual basis. All aspects of licensed bingo activities are controlled by the Texas Lottery Commission, and they ensure that bingo games are conducted fairly and that proceeds are used properly. The division offers two types of licenses that a nonprofit can obtain. One is the regular annual conductor license and the non-annual temporary license. Organizations like volunteer fire departments apply for the non-annual licenses and rely heavily on charitable bingo games to raise money for operations. Currently, they are only authorized to conduct 6 bingo games a year, and this bill will increase that to 12 bingo games a year, providing twice as many opportunities to raise funds, very much needed funds. Mr. President, I move suspension.
Members, Senator LaMantia moves suspension of the regular order of business, House Bill 639. Is there objection? Okay. Members, is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, rules are suspended. Chair lays out on second reading House Bill 639. Secretary will read the caption.
House Bill 639, relating to the number of temporary licenses to conduct bingo issued to certain authorized organizations in a calendar year.
Senator LaMantia, you recognize for a motion.
Mr. President, I move passage to third reading.
Members, Senator LaMantia moves passage to third reading. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, bill is passed to third reading. Senator LaMantia, you recognize for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
So moved, Mr. President.
Members, Senator LaMantia moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll. roll.
Alvarado, Benford,
There being
Burgo,
30 ayes and 1 nay, the rule is suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage HB 639. Secretary will read the caption.
HB 639, relating the number of temporary licenses to conduct bingo issued to a certain authorized organization in a calendar year.
Senator Lamontia, recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for final passage.
Members, Senator Lamontia moves final passage HB 639. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt, Burgo, Blanco.
30 ayes and 1 nay. The bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator Lamontia.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members.
Senator Hughes, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business, take up and consider committee substitute House Bill 2194.
Thank you, Mr. President. And members, I move to suspend the Senate's regular order of business to take up and consider at this time House Bill 2194. Especially proud of this bill, which will create the Made in Texas labeling program so that products made wholly or substantially in our state can be promoted and advertised as such. It'll be implemented by the Texas Economic Development Tourism Office. We'll also establish criteria and a logo that qualifying businesses and individuals can use for free to market Texas-made products. Should the Senate see fit to suspend, and we get to that point, I have a floor amendment that tightens the bill. It's a bill we're very excited about, and I move suspension of the regular order of business.
Members, Senator Hughes moves suspension of the regular order of business on House Committee Substitute House Bill 2194. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, rule is suspended. Chair lays out on second reading Committee Substitute House Bill 2194. Secretary will read the caption.
Committee Substitute House Bill 2194 relating to establishing a Made in Texas labeling program.
There is an amendment. Secretary will read the amendment.
Excuse me, Senator. Floor amendment number 1 by Hughes.
Senator Hughes on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. And members, the amendment before you clarifies and makes this change to the bill. This will not apply to agricultural products. Agriculture is pretty complex in this way. What if a cow is raised in another state, then comes to Texas before it's slaughtered? You can fill in the blank with other examples. Kind of difficult to pin down. Also, we already have the Go Texan program and like that for agricultural products. So to make this cleaner, this amendment will exempt agricultural products from the program. It's actually a suggestion of Senator Johnson's in the hearing, and that's all the amendment does. And I move it's acceptable to the author, I should know, and I move its adoption.
Members, Senator Hughes moves adoption of floor amendment number 1. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, floor amendment number 1 is adopted. Senator Hughes, you're recognized for a motion.
Mr. President, we're excited about the economic development this will bring, the help for small business and for all of us, so I proudly move passage to third reading.
Members, Senator Hughes moves passage to third reading. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, bill is passed to third reading. Senator Hughes, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
That is my motion.
Members, Senator Hughes moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Virgil, Blanco.
There being 30 ayes and 1 nay, the rule is suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage Committee Substitute House Bill 2194. Secretary will read the caption.
Committee Substitute House Bill 2194 relating to establishing a Made in Texas labeling program.
Senator Hughes, you're recognized for a motion.
Mr. President, I move final passage.
Members, Senator Hughes moves final passage. Committee Substitute House Bill 2194. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Virgil, Blanco.
30 ayes and 1 nay. The bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members.
Senator Whitmire, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business, take up and consider House Bill 3553.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, you said 3553? Yeah.
Yes, sir. 3553.
Thank you. I move to suspend the Senate's regular order of business to take up and consider House Bill 3553. Members, last session we passed Senate Bill 1831, which made an offense of human trafficking a first-degree felony if the crime occurred on or within 1,000 feet of a primary or secondary school. 3553 will now add colleges and universities to that restriction. Thank you, Mr. President. I move suspension.
Members, Dean Whitmire moves suspension of the regular order of business on House Bill 3553. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, rule is suspended. Chair lays out on second reading House Bill 3553. Secretary will read the caption.
House Bill 3553, relating to increasing the criminal penalty for the offense of trafficking of persons if committed at certain locations.
Members, there is an amendment. Secretary will read the amendment.
Floor Amendment number 1 by Bettencourt.
Senator Bettencourt on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. This language for the floor amendment comes from Senate Bill 1969, which was passed unanimously by the body already. There's three specific examples of serious, conduct issues at arrest and near college campuses. The floor amendment would enhance penalties for certain sexual crimes that happen on higher campuses in Texas. These offenses include public lewdness, indecent exposure, invasive visual recording, and voyeurism. I believe the amendment is acceptable to the author, and I move adoption.
Dean Whitmire on the amendment.
The amendment is acceptable to the author.
Members, Senator Bettencourt moves adoption. Floor amendment number 1 is acceptable to Dean Whitmire. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, floor amendment number 1 is adopted. Dean Whitmire, you recognized for a motion.
I move passage to third reading of House Bill 3553.
Members, Senator Whitmire moves passage to third reading. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, bill is passed to third reading. Dean Whitmire, you recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
I so move.
Members, Senator Whitmire moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bettencourt,
31 ayes and no nays. The rule is suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage HB 3553. Secretary will read the caption.
HB 3553, relating to increasing the criminal penalty for the offense of trafficking of persons if committed at certain locations.
Dean Whitmire, you recognized for a motion.
I so move.
Members, Dean Whitmire moves final passage HB 3553. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bettencourt,
31 ayes and no nays. The bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Dean Whitmire.
Thank you.
Dean Whitmire, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on House Bill 3554.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I move to suspend the Senate regular order of business, take up and consider House Bill 3554, which is the sister to 3553, where we added higher ed to the restrictions on human trafficking within 1,000 feet. It enhances it to a first-degree felony. This will add the state's Child Protective Service facilities. So I'm so move at this time, Mr. President.
Members, Dean Whitmire moves suspension of the regular order of business on House Bill 3554. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, rule is suspended. Chair lays out on second reading House Bill 3554. Secretary will read the caption.
House Bill 3554 relating to increasing the criminal penalty for the offense of trafficking of persons if committed at certain locations.
Dean Whitmire, you're recognized for a motion.
I move suspension. I actually moved to third reading of House Bill 3554.
Members, Senator Whitmire moves passage to third reading. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, bill is passed to third reading. Senator Whitmire, you recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
I so move.
Members, Dean Whitmire moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt, Birdwell, Bluntman.
31 ayes and no nays. The rule is suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage HB 3554. Secretary will read the caption.
HB 3554 relating to increasing the criminal penalty for the offense of trafficking of persons if committed at certain locations.
Dean Whitmire, you're recognized for a motion.
So move.
Members, Senator Whitmire moves final passage HB 3554. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt, Birdwell, Bluntman.
There being 31 ayes and no nays, the bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Dean Whitmire.
Thank you, Mr. President, for being so nice. And tell Karina thank you. And Patsy, and I just.
Dean Whitmire, you recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business, take up and consider House Bill 1558.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend the Senate's regular order of business, take up and consider House Bill 1558. House Bill 1558 is bracketed to the Southgate neighborhood in my district so that residents can update their deed restrictions. And I can go over the details, but probably not necessary. I move suspension.
Members, Dean Whitmire moves suspension of the regular order of business, House Bill 1558. There is objection. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bettencourt, Birdwell, Blanco,
Being
Campbell.
26 ayes and 5 nays, the rule is suspended. Chair lays out on second reading House Bill 1558. Secretary will read the caption.
House Bill 1558 relating to the extension or amendment of deed restrictions in certain older subdivisions.
Members, there is an amendment. Secretary will read the amendment.
Floor amendment number 1 by Whitmire.
Dean Whitmire on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. And this is a local bill, I might emphasize, only applying to Southgate in my district. It adjoins Rice University. In an effort to help the residents and homeowners with their deed restrictions, we wanted to make certain that Rice University could still control and call the decision-making for the university with the lots that they own. So it's acceptable.
Senator West, for what purpose?
Will the author?
I'm sorry, Senator West?
Do you yield, Senator Dean Whitmire? Do you yield?
Reluctantly.
You're recognized, Senator West.
I need to ask a question of the author.
Senator West, this is in my district, and you've been here long enough to know a local bill is a local bill.
Is this in the state of Texas?
Yes, sir.
So it's in my district
it's
too.
In Houston, and this is not my first bill. You can save your
Go ahead.
questions for one of the freshmen.
I will reluctantly pull down the proposed question that I had of Senator Whitmire, since he's reluctant to answer or entertain the question, Mr. President. I reluctantly do it, but I will do it.
Thank you, Senator West.
And I reluctantly
say again, Dean Whitmire.
I reluctantly hold back my answer too.
Okay. Thank you, Dean Whitmire. Senator Bettencourt, for what purpose?
Ask a question of the author.
Dean Whitmire, do you yield?
Sure.
You're recognized, Senator Bettencourt.
Right. I'm just trying to follow up on Senator West's question. Is if this is a local bill, is it local to Houston or Houston? It says
in
I
my
live
Senate
in Houston.
district.
Is this my local bill or your local bill?
It's your hometown, but
Okay,
you
so-
certainly didn't go to Rice. We all know that.
No, I did not go to Rice. I'm an Aggie.
Yeah, we know that too.
That's right. So if it's my local bill, am I ready to object?
do whatever
Are these my
you-
deed restrictions?
No, sir. It's just for Southampton.
Just Southampton.
Guaranteed.
The city of Southampton?
No, it's actually the Civic Club right there on Sunset, borders Rice University, and they're trying to improve their deed restrictions, and they need this legislation. It won't affect your community, top, side, or bottom.
All right. Well, Dean, I'm just happy to know which part of our local bill it is.
Welcome on the team, Senator Bettencourt.
Right.
Welcome on the team. What the world is going on here?
Members, the motion before us is the adoption of floor amendment number 1. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, floor amendment number 1 is adopted. Dean Whitmire, you recognize for a motion.
I move passage to third reading of House Bill 1558.
Members, Dean Whitmire moves passage to third reading. There is objection. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bettencourt, Birdwell.
There being 26 ayes and 5 nays, the bill is passed to third reading. Dean Whitmire, you recognize for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
Move. I so move, Mr. President.
Members, Dean Whitmire moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bettencourt, Birdwell, Blanco.
There being 26 ayes and 5 nays, the rule is suspended. Chair lays down on third reading and final passage, HB 1558. Secretary will read the caption.
HB 1558 relating to the extension or amendment of deed restrictions in certain older subdivisions.
Dean Whitmire, you recognize for a motion.
I so move.
Dean Whitmire moves final passage, HB 1558. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell,
Giving
Blanco.
26 ayes and 5 nays, the bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Dean Whitmire.
Thank you, Mr. President and members.
Members, the following motion in writing.
Mr. President, I move suspension of Senate Rule 5.14, the intent calendar rule, in order to move the intent calendar deadline to 5:30 p.m. today. Motion by Hughes.
Members, is there objection to the motion in writing? Hearing and seeing none, motion is adopted. Members, intent calendar as deadline has been moved to 5:30. I say again, intent calendar as deadline has been moved to 5:30. Senator Johnson, you recognize for a motion to suspend the regular order of business, House Bill 1184.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, House Bill 1184 addresses a shortcoming we have in our criminal justice system. This is a pro-law enforcement bill. Presently under statute, only law enforcement agencies are able to review criminal records and criminal histories. This would allow researchers to also have access to this data and work with law enforcement agencies so we can more efficiently and effectively administer justice in Texas. Members, I move suspension of the regular order of business.
Members, Senator Johnson moves suspension of the regular order of business, HB 1184. There is objection. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt, Birdwell, Blanco.
Being 26 ayes and 5 nays, the rule is suspended. Chair lays out on second reading House Bill 1184. Secretary will read the caption.
House Bill 1184, relating to access to criminal history record information for use in certain research or statistical projects.
Senator Johnson, you recognize for a motion.
Move passage to third reading on this pro-law enforcement bill.
Members, Senator Johnson moves passage to third reading. Is there objection? There is objection. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt, Birdwell, Blanco.
There being 26 ayes and 5 nays, the bill is passed to third reading. Senator Johnson, you recognize for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
So moved.
Members, Senator Johnson moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt, Birdwell, Blanco.
There being 26 ayes and 5 nays, the rule is suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage HB 1184. Secretary will read the caption.
HB 1184, relating to access to criminal history record information for use in certain research or statistical projects.
Senator Johnson, you recognize for a motion.
Move final passage on House Bill 1184.
Members, Senator Johnson moves final passage HB 1184. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt, Birdwell,
There being
Blanco.
26 ayes and 5 nays, the bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members.
Senator Johnson, you recognize for a motion to suspend the regular order of business, take up and consider committee substitute House Bill 4034.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 4034 is also called the David Walters Act. It raises the amount of benefits that surviving spouses and their children of first responders who die in the line of duty are entitled to under the Dallas Police and Fire pension. I move suspension of the regular order of business.
Members, Senator Johnson moves suspension of the regular order of business. Committee substitute House Bill 4034. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none. Rule suspended. Chair lays out on second reading Committee substitute House Bill 4034. Secretary will read the caption.
Committee substitute House Bill 4034, relating to certain disability and death benefits payable by the public retirement systems for police and firefighters in certain municipalities.
Senator Johnson, you recognize for a motion.
I move passage to third reading.
Members, Senator Johnson moves passage to third reading. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none. Bill is passed to third reading. Senator Johnson, you recognize for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
I move to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
Members, Senator Johnson moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt, Birdwell,
Being
Blanco.
30 ayes and 1 nay, the rule is suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage Committee substitute House Bill 4034. Secretary will read the caption.
Committee substitute House Bill 4034, relating to certain disability and death benefits payable by the public retirement systems for police and firefighters in certain municipalities.
Senator Johnson, you recognize for a motion.
Move final passage of committee substitute House Bill 4034.
Members, Senator Johnson moves final passage. Committee substitute HB 4034. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Barber,
Having
LeBlanc.
30 ayes and 1 nay, the bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Hall, you are recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on House Bill 4421.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. The Texas Legislative Medal of Honor is the highest state military award available to those who served, were born in or died in Texas, or were a Texas resident at the time of entrance into military service. However, current legislation regarding the Texas Legislative Medal of Honor fails to recognize those in service before, on, and after September 11th. House Bill 4421 seeks to address this issue by requiring the Texas Legislative Medal of Honor to be awarded to a Texas resident who receives a Congressional Medal of Honor and excludes such an award from the limitations on the number of medals that the legislature may direct the governor to award during the regular legislative sessions. Members, I do have an amendment for a third period of award for the medal.
Members, Senator Hall moves suspension of the regular order of business. House Bill 4421. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, rules are suspended. Chair lays out on second reading House Bill 4421. Secretary will read the caption.
House Bill 4421 relating to qualifications for and limitations on awarding the Texas Legislative Medal of Honor.
Members, there is an amendment. Secretary will read the amendment.
Floor Amendment number 1 by Hall.
Senator Hall on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, this amendment will split the awarding periods for the Legislative Medal of Honor into 3 distinct periods. One for those that served between 1835 to 1955, and one for those who served from 1956 until September 11th, and one for the period after September 11th. This will ensure that our Cold War veterans, Vietnam veterans, and Gulf War veterans are able to be separately honored from those who were before 1955 as it currently exists in the code. I move adoption of the amendment.
Members, Senator Hall moves adoption for amendment number 1. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, floor amendment number 1 is adopted. Senator Hall, you recognize for a motion.
I move passage to third reading, Mr. President.
Members, Senator Hall moves passage to third reading. Is there objection? Hearing and seeing none, bill is passed to third reading. Senator Hall, you recognize for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
So moved, Mr. President.
Members, Senator Hall moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Barber, LeBlanc.
31 ayes and no nays. The rule is suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage HB 4421. Secretary will read the caption.
HB 4421 relating to qualifications for and limitations on awarding the Texas Legislative Medal of Honor.
Senator Hall, you recognize for a motion.
Move final passage, Mr. President.
Members, Senator Hall moves final passage HB 4421. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Barber, LeBlanc.
31 ayes and no nays. The bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator Hall.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, members.
Members, following motion in writing, Secretary will read the motion.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent for House Bill 2850 relating to discovery procedures for civil actions brought under the Family Code to be withdrawn from the Committee on Jurisprudence and re-referred to the Committee on State Affairs. Author, Senator Hughes. Senator Hughes, Chair Committee from which bill is being withdrawn. Senator Hughes, Chair Committee to which bill is being re-referred.
Members, any objection to the motion in writing? Hearing and seeing none, motion is adopted. Members, the following motion in writing, Secretary will read the motion.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent for House Bill 4456 relating to the calculation of certain ad valorem tax rates of a school district to be withdrawn from the Committee on Education and re-referred to the Committee on Local Government. Author, Senator Betancourt. Senator Creighton, Chair Committee to which bill is being withdrawn. Senator Betancourt, Chair Committee to which bill is being re-referred.
Members, any objection to the motion in writing? Hearing and seeing none, motion is adopted. Senator Hughes, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on HJR 132.
Thank you, Mr. President. And members, I move to suspend the Senate's regular order of business to take up and consider at this time House Joint Resolution 132. Representative Hefner, my state representative, filed this bill, and the House passed it with a hard two-thirds vote. As everyone here is aware, Texas has had a long animosity toward the personal income tax, and that's why it is forbidden in the Texas Constitution. And we've done that because we recognize that that hurts people. It hurts our economy. It hurts jobs. It's just not good policy. And so we've learned that now there's a new idea that's coming over from Europe, and it's a net worth tax. So under this tax, each year the government would look at your assets and your liabilities, and you would be taxed on the difference between your assets and your liabilities. Now, for some of us would probably be helped by that, but it's obviously bad for the economy, bad for jobs, bad for Texas. And so 6 states in the United States are already considering this. So the resolution before you would propose to the voters a constitutional amendment to prevent that horrible anti-people, anti-jobs tax from ever coming to Texas. And I move suspension of the regular order of business.
Senator Eckhart, for what purpose?
To ask questions of the author.
Do you yield, Senator Hughes?
Of course I'll yield.
You recognize Senator Eckhart.
Do we have an estate tax or an inheritance tax in Texas?
Well, Senator, as you know, the answer is yes and no, because federal law gives an exemption. If you pay an estate tax to the state, you get an exemption from the feds. So it's a pass-through for states that do have it. Is that what you're talking about on the estate tax?
Does the state of Texas have an estate or an inheritance tax?
No, ma'am.
Has it ever had an inheritance or an estate tax?
I don't know, but if you know the answer, I believe you. I don't know if we have.
I think it at one point had a species of inheritance tax, but it was very small and gotten rid of. Okay. And the vast majority of states in the United States don't have inheritance or estate taxes. Isn't that true?
Well, that's true. And for the states that do, as you know, you're given a credit on your federal estate tax return. So the net effect is the same, whether the state charges it or the feds charge it. But I'm sure you're right. Most states do not. I think that's right. And if you say that's right, I believe you. I'm not sure.
And under federal law, how big does your estate have to be before the feds even care to take a tax from it?
I don't. At one time it was $1 million, but I don't know if that's been indexed to inflation. You may know. I'd love to know. I don't know the answer.
I believe, I could be wrong about this, but I think it is significantly higher than that. You have to have a multi-million-dollar estate before the feds even care to look at taxing your estate.
Good, good. And to be clear, the resolution before us is not about the estate tax. This is about living people paying a tax on their net worth annually. Just to be clear, this is not about the estate tax.
So it is about looking at the total wealth of your estate and taxing it, though, correct?
Oh, yes, that's exactly right. Yes.
So it's not about an inheritance tax, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
But it is about taxing your estate. While you're alive, your estate that you have while you're alive.
I'm not trying to split hairs. I don't think it's an estate until you pass away, unless you have a really nice house. But I think we're talking about the same thing. It's your assets minus your liabilities.
Yes. So this is a prospective constitutional amendment to prevent something that isn't currently happening but might happen in some future Texas that's very different from the Texas that we live in today.
We sure hope that will be the case. California, Connecticut, Hawaii, Illinois, Maryland, New York, Washington have discussed and filed legislation to develop something like this. We don't think, and you may have better information, I don't believe any of those have finally passed in those states. I hope not, but we sure don't want it in Texas.
Thank you for answering my question.
Oh, thank you, Senator.
Senator Perry, for what purpose?
Question for the author.
Do you yield, Senator Hughes?
Of course I'll yield.
You're recognized, Senator Perry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to be clear, and you kind of cleared it up a little bit, this isn't the estate tax.
This is not
This is literally going out, and the feds have talked about this concept too, looking at unrealized gains in your stock portfolio. What that means is your stock's worth $100,000 a day on paper. Tomorrow it could be worth $50,000. It could be worth $200,000, but you didn't cash that out. You have no cash in your pocket. But the feds want to cut off a point to say that $100,000 it's worth today, even though you didn't cash it out to pay the tax, would be a net worth tax. So totally different than estate taxes. As you correctly pointed out, you got to die to pay those. This would be assessed and possibly could affect transactions inside of a 401k, any other thing. If your house values go up, again, no cash, but values up, depending on what that threshold is, you would write a check. No cash.
That's right, Senator. Pretty
that's
scary.
what this is about.
That's
correct?
right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Hughes moves suspension of the regular order of business on HJR 132. There is objection. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bettencourt, Bravo,
Being
Blanco.
21 ayes and 10 nays, the rule is suspended. Chair lays out on second reading HJR 132. Secretary will read the caption.
HJR 132, proposing a constitutional amendment prohibiting the imposition of an individual net worth or wealth tax.
Senator Hughes, you're recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I appreciate the discussion by members of the Senate and folks involved in this. I think we understand what this means. A job-killing tax hurts working people the most, no matter how it sounds or how it might feel. We don't want that to happen in Texas, and so I move passage to third reading.
Members, Senator Hughes moves passage to third reading. There is objection. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bettencourt, Bravo,
Being
Blanco.
21 ayes and 10 nays, the bill is passed to third reading and will hold there. Senator Hughes.
Senator Sparks, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on House Bill 63.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend the regular order of business on House Bill 63.
Senator Sparks moves suspension of the regular order of business on House Bill 63. Secretary, call the roll.
Alvarado, Bettencourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell.
20 ayes and 11 nays. The rules are suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage of House Bill 63. Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 63 relating to reports of child abuse or neglect and certain preliminary investigations of those reports.
Senator Sparks, are recognized for a motion.
I move final passage on House Bill 63.
Senator Sparks moves final passage of House Bill 63. Secretary, call the roll.
Alvarado, Bettencourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Creighton.
20 ayes and 11 nays. The bill is finally passed. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. President and members.
Senator Bettencourt, recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on House Bill 246.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I move to suspend the regular order of business and take up House Bill 246.
Senator Bettencourt moves suspension of the regular order of business on House Bill 246. Secretary, call the roll.
Alvarado, Bettencourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell.
19 ayes and 12 nays. The rules are suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage of House Bill 246. Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 246 relating to establishing a pilot program for recording ballot counting activity.
Senator Bettencourt, you're recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move final passage of House Bill 246.
Senator Bettencourt moves final passage of House Bill 246. Secretary, call the roll.
Alvarado, Bettencourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell.
19 ayes and 12 nays. The bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Birdwell recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on House Bill 1825.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I move to suspend the Senate's regular order of business, take up and consider House Bill 1825. Members, House Bill 1825 would allow the Board of Trustees of the Arlington Independent School District to adopt a policy allowing alcohol to be served at the Center for Visual and Performing Arts, a standalone complex in Arlington ISD. Currently, the inability to have alcohol at the CVPA inhibits many nonprofits from using the venue to host events during non-school hours. This world-class facility is located at the center of Arlington's entertainment district and is more affordable than other venues. The bill would help smaller foundations and organizations host events in the entertainment district. Events where alcohol would be consumed would be limited to events hosted by third parties, so school events would not be included. Senator Hughes, this is not a bill for kids to drink at the facility. Arlington ISD would benefit from HB 1825 in the same way that the Victoria ISD School Board may adopt policies allowing consumption and possession at their facilities. With that, Mr. President, I move suspension.
Senator Birdwell moves suspension of the regular order of business on House Bill 1825. Is there objection? Hearing none, rules are suspended. Chair lays out on second reading House Bill 1825. Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 1825, relating to the consumption, possession, and sale of alcoholic beverages at certain performing arts facilities owned by certain school districts.
Senator Birdwell, you're recognized for a motion.
Move passes the third reading, Mr. President.
Senator Birdwell moves passes the third reading. Is there objection? Hearing none, the bill is passed the third reading. Senator Birdwell, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
So moved, Mr. President.
Senator Birdwell moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary, call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell.
27 ayes and 4 nays. The rules are suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage House Bill 1825. Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 1825, relating to the consumption, possession, and sale of alcoholic beverages at certain performing arts facilities owned by certain school districts.
Senator Birdwell recognized for a motion.
Move final passage, Mr. President.
Senator Birdwell moves final passage of House Bill 1825. Secretary, call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Creighton.
27 ayes, 4 nays. The bill is finally passed. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. President and members.
To the folks in the gallery, welcome to your Texas Senate. It's good to have you here to watch your Senate at work. Senator Springer recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on House Bill 3162.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I move to suspend the Senate's regular order of business and take up and consider at this time House Bill 3162. Members, this reform bill is the Texas Advance Directive Act, and it is a compromise bill with scores of stakeholders. This bill provides greater protections for the rights of both the patients and the healthcare provider. The bill corrects several deficiencies in several areas, and let me go through some of the details. Today, in current law, surrogates have to provide 48-hour notice. They're provided a 48-hour notice from the Ethics Committee meeting. The new bill will make that 7 days. It must be in writing. The family of the surrogate's advocates are allowed to participate in the meetings, and that's just one of the highlights from that section. In current law, the surrogate has 10 calendar days to be transferred as a patient. That number is raised to 25 in this bill. In current law, no explicit criteria related to the decision to continue or withdraw life-sustaining treatment. The Ethics Committee now under this bill must consider the patient's known wishes, whether LST benefits outweighs the harm, and whether LST conforms with the prevailing standard of care. The Ethics Committee may not make quality of life judgments. The committee cannot consider the patient's pre-existing disabilities unless it's relevant to the medical application of the continuation of LST. The surrogate is not allowed to revoke a DNR, or in current law, a surrogate is not allowed to revoke a DNR order issued by a physician. In this bill, a surrogate may revoke that DNR order issued by a physician. And lastly, I'll point out, and there's many others though, no reporting requirement on the use of disputed resolutions exists in today's law. With this bill, facilities must submit a report to HHSC that includes information, the number of days between the admission and advocation of a disputed resolution process, the outcomes such as was the patient transferred, withdrawn, continuation on LST, or the patient's death. And we will have that data brought together in an aggregated manner to where it doesn't identify anybody. And members, this is by in no means, one person working on this. This has been scores and scores of people for years that have moved this forward. And I would like to thank a few people, and I know that truthfully everybody who has been involved in this process has helped along the way. I know this session chairwoman Stephanie Click and her staff, Brian Sulfut and Teresa Shirley, have spent hundreds of hours working on this as well. There are many organizations that are part of these stakeholders that all came together. And over the years and decades, many of us have experienced some of the competing differences of opinions on this. But they all came together in good faith. They all came together to do what was right for Texans. As the Texas Catholic Conference of Bishops, Texas Right to Life, Texans for Life, Texas Alliance for Life, Texas Hospital Association, Texas Medical Association, the Texas Nursing Association, Protected Fragile Texas Kids, the Coalition of Texans with Disabilities, Texas New Mexico Hospice Organization, and Family Freedom Project. And members, I venture every one of the senators on this floor has done an awful lot in this. I know Senator Perry did the DNR in 2017. Senator Hughes has been working on this. It's an important bill. I'd like to thank Senator Kolkhorst and Senator Schwartner, who both have chaired HHS and have heard hundreds and hundreds of hours of testimony on this. And for those of us from the House that have come over, Senator Parker and I, when we were in the House, spent an awful lot of time on the last one we did with that, and hundreds of hours. And I would like to thank the Lieutenant Governor who's helped us in this process along with his staff. And with that, members, I move suspension of the Senate's regular order of business.
Senator Kolkhorst, for what purpose?
To comment and ask the Senator a few questions.
Senator Springer, will you yield?
Yes, I yield.
Senator Springer, I think we've talked about this in committee, and we've talked to each other about this, about the long road, the history back to George W. Bush when we began this in I think it was 97 or 99. And so your work over the last 8 months, you feel good about where we've landed this bill?
I absolutely do. And I've got to say, everybody coming together, and we've seen those, as I said, people had to put down some of their opinions. Everybody had to give a little bit to get for the greater good.
Well, and I just want to compliment everyone that worked so hard. I think when you take very difficult life and death decisions, and it is for the family, for the patient, for the caregivers, the doctors, the different panels that have to review these very difficult cases. We have heard, when you say, literally hundreds of hours, starting, I know when I chaired public health in the House starting in 2009. And so we've had bills come, that were probably pro-hospital, the pro-life side, and, somewhere in between. And I just want to compliment you. I know Senator Parker, then House Rep Parker, certainly Senator Hughes, House Rep Senator Hughes, and many others that have worked on this bill through the years. And I just want to thank you for your leadership. You and Senator Hughes sharing this bill, him laying it out in committee, and you then carrying it on the floor is very fitting of the spirit of this bill. And I want to say that it's not a perfect bill. Would you agree?
No, on these situations, I think we've got to an extremely good spot. One could argue one side or the other to go up or down on any given point. And I think we've come to an understanding that this is a better place to be for Texans.
But it gives families a chance with the days that are added, with the transfer notices, with just different time slots to, again, process things, make decisions. It gives the care team a little more time. And we didn't always come to these points. This wasn't, every case. As we said, it was pretty rare that the old statute had to be the guide for these situations. But this gives, I think, a tip of the hat to life, that we're going to give us every chance that we can to save a life and to work with families to make good decisions for their loved ones.
Absolutely. And, the one has to be literally, if not the most difficult decision in someone's life, is a loved one dying. And in the old system, there wasn't transparency. There wasn't clarity. I don't know if I'm involved in the process. I don't know if I can be involved in the process. In taking care of those things, that patient may still die, but they've been involved in it. They've had an understanding. They've felt like they were listened to. And we always hope for the best outcomes, but these are extremely difficult situations.
Amen. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you, members.
Senator Parker, for what purpose?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just questions for the Senator.
Senator Springer, will you yield?
Happy to yield.
Thank you, Senator Springer. First of all, I just want to thank you for your leadership and Representative Click on getting this bill where it is. Just as Senator Colcourse talked about the journey, the long road. I think the first time I ever really visited, got to know Representative Hughes, then Representative Hughes, now Senator Hughes, was working on laying out bills on this topic some 17 years ago in the House. And so I just want to thank all of the stakeholders. It was an incredible effort this year when everyone recommitted themselves to finding common ground. There's nothing more important and sacred than protecting life in the state. We protect life from, obviously, from conception through natural death, and I'm so thrilled with the breakthrough here and all that everyone's been able to accomplish. So I just want to thank all the stakeholders again. I think about all the individual babies that we've individually helped over the years and tried to fight for them to have a chance at life, and the fact that those families now, what they went through has made a huge difference for future generations, for future families, because of this new legislation that we will pass here today. So again, I just want to thank you for getting this here to the Senate floor and completing the journey. So thank you, Senator.
Well, I thank you for that. And I mentioned all the legislators, but, also our staff has lived with us as well for decades, staying on top of those. I mean, for myself, Jonathan Mathers has spent 8 years and again, hundreds and hundreds of hours sitting there listening and going back and negotiating back and forth. And as while we take on other things and talk to constituents, sometimes our staff has done an awful lot as well, and everybody deserves a thank you in this.
Absolutely, but it's an enormous victory for life. Thank you, Senator.
Senator Springer moves suspension of the regular order of business on House Bill 3162. Is there objection? Hearing none. Rules are suspended. Chair lays out on second reading House Bill 3162. Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 3162, relating to advanced directives, do not resuscitate orders, and healthcare treatment decisions made by or on behalf of certain patients.
Senator Springer, recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move passage to third reading for House Bill 3162.
Senator Springer moves passage to third reading. Is there objection? Hearing none. The bill is passed to third readings. Senator Springer, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
I move to suspend the 3-day rule.
Senator Springer moves suspension of the 3-day rules. Secretary, call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell.
31 ayes, no nays. The rules are suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage House Bill 3162. Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 3162, relating to advanced directives, do not resuscitate orders, and healthcare treatment decisions made by or on behalf of certain patients.
Senator Springer is recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, Texas is truly blessed on this day with the passages of this bill, and I move final passage of Senate Bill 3162.
Senator Hughes, you're recognized. For what purpose?
Mr. President, to speak on final passage.
I yield.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Springer. It's all been said so well, but just again, so that this moment doesn't pass without acknowledging all the work done by real people outside the building, some that work in the building, advocates, groups all across the spectrum. Many advocates have retired, even passed away during the work on this original statute passed back in 1999, problems discovered in 2001, and attempts to fix it, big improvements made along the way. And I want to stress, and it's already been said so well by our colleagues, we are thankful, we are so thankful for our medical providers in our state, for those physicians and nurses and workers, for the technology, for the wonderful help that's available to patients who need it. And families who are in these difficult situations need their help. They need those medical professionals, their counsel, their wisdom, their hearts. And we've been to these hospitals and seen all that these professionals pour in to help them. We've also seen a few situations that happen too often where families and patients' rights were being violated. This was not the norm. This was not the norm. Texas has caring and dedicated and talented healthcare providers. However, Texas law for too long has allowed hospitals and doctors to impose their quality of life judgments on the patients. Most of our doctors and hospitals were not, but it happened too much because of all the work. Senator Springer, Senator Parker, my goodness, Chair Colcourse, we could go around the room. I think everybody in this chamber at least once has had to advocate on behalf of a family in a situation like this. And so finally, after all this work, I'm just here to say congratulations and thanks. And the essence of this issue for me says we are so thankful for these providers, and when families are facing difficult choices about end-of-life care, they need help. They need advice and wisdom and counsel from these providers. But when the question comes down to quality of life, is this life worth living? Do I want to live that way? That's a question for the patient and the family, not the doctor or the hospital or us or anybody else. And this bill, Senator Springer, thank you, puts that firmly in place in Texas law. So I thank you, I applaud you, and each person who worked so hard for so long on this. Thank you for this bill.
Senator Hall, for what purpose?
Speak on the bill.
You are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too, Senator Springer, thank you very much for this bill. We've come a long, long way. Because just before I got here, and some of the members here that were here at the time will remember, there was a strong attempt to do just the opposite of what this bill did. There was a strong move to turn this over to the hospitals, for them to have full control over end of life, for them to be able to make the decision with the family left completely out of it. And it's so good that all the hard work that's gone in, as Senator Hughes said, by a number of people, session after session, to move this to where we are today. And this is going to be remembered as one of those moments in time where we made a real progress in protecting the right to life at the other end. We've done a great job at the beginning of it, but we haven't before now been able to get there to the end of it. And to think we've gone from where they were taking us before I got here was to do just the opposite. Let the hospital decide that while the patients and family had no say. So this is a great day for Texas. It's a great day for Texans, and it will be remembered as one of those milestone bills that truly serve the people of Texas. Thank you.
Senator Springer moves final passage of House Bill 3162. Secretary, call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell.
31 ayes and no nays. The bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Members, the Senate is about to recess temporarily so that committees can hear bills and pass bills, hopefully, out of committee. Chair recognizes Senator Huffman for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I move to suspend the 24-hour posting rule so that the Senate Committee on Finance can meet in the Senate Press Room 2E9 to vote on pending business today upon recess. Thank you.
Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion's adopted. Chair recognizes Senator Birdwell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I move to suspend the Senate's 24-hour posting rule in accordance with Senate Rules 11.10 and 11.18 and all necessary rules so that the Senate Committee on Natural Resources and Economic Development may meet immediately upon recess in the press room to consider 5 pending bills that we were unable to vote last night. Members, I need all members of Natural Resources and Economic Development for these 5 bills. Thank you, Mr. President and members. I move.
Is there any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion's adopted. Senator Squirtner, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I move to suspend the 24-hour posting rule in accordance with Senate Rule 11.10 and 11.18 so that the Senate Committee on Business and Commerce can take up the following bills on Friday, May 19th at 8:30 in E 1.036, HB 139 relating to the provision of notice of certain proposed rules by state agencies, HB 173 relating to the licensing regulation of genetic counselors requiring an occupational license authorizing a fee, and HB 4579 relating to the payment of employment compensation by certain agencies. Mr. President, members, I move suspension.
Is there objection? Hearing none, the motion is adopted. Senator Kokos for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I suspend the rules to post for a formal meeting after upon a recess today. I move to suspend the 24-hour posting rule in accordance with Senate Rules 11.10 and 11.18 so that the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services can meet today upon recess in the Betty King Room to consider pending business. Mr. President and members, if there are no questions, that is my motion.
Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion is adopted. Senator Middleton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I move to suspend the posting rule so that Senate Committee on Education can meet today, May 18th, 10 minutes upon recess in the Senate Press Room 2E9 to consider pending business. And with that, I move suspension.
Is there any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion's adopted. Senator Perry recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. I move to suspend the 24-hour posting rule in accordance with Senate Rules 11.1 and 11.18 so that the Senate Committee on Water, Agriculture, and Rural Affairs can add the following bills to the agenda for tomorrow, Friday, May 19th, 2023 at 7:30. Ag Committee tomorrow at 7:30, E 1.012. The 2 bills to be added are HB 3744, Representative Goldman, sponsor me, Senator Perry, and House Bill 4820, Representative Orr with Senate sponsor Alvarado. With that, Mr. President, if there are no questions, I move suspension.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted. Senator Creighton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend the posting rules so that the Senate Subcommittee on Higher Education can meet today, May 18th, 15 minutes upon recess in the Senate Press Room 2E9 to consider committee business. Mr. President, members, no questions. I move suspension.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion's adopted. Senator Nichols, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend the 24-hour posting rule so the Senate Transportation Committee can take up and consider House Bill 923 tomorrow, 8 o'clock, room E016.
Is there objection? Hearing none, motion's adopted. Chair recognizes Senator Whitmire for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate stand in recess until 4:30.
Is there objection? Hearing none, motion's adopted. The Senate will recess until 4:30.